This is my curriculum vitae, or CV, which is basically my medical professional resume. And I get a lot of questions, particularly from residents and junior faculty in academics, about how to format a CV. So I'm going to show you the way that I do it. Every institution is different, and particularly if you're on a tenure track at an academic institution, it's important early on to make sure that you are using a format that is acceptable to your university. That said, I had this format. I had my CV formatted pretty early, and I submitted this as pretty much in the format that you see it here when I went up for promotion and tenure last year, and my university approved me for promotion to associate professor. So this is basically my up-to-date CV with a few things blotted out, like my phone number here. And it's up to date as of June 2017, which is when I'm making this video. And I get questions not only on format, but particularly on how I include some of the, I guess, let's say, less conventional activities that I do professionally, like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So I'm going to show you how I include those things. And I'm also going to show you some kind of tricks that I do with using links and some other things like that to make the CV a little bit more tech savvy and a little more convenient for the people who may be reading this. If I submit this to someone, they can more easily navigate my CV and pull up articles I've published, things like that. So I'm going to show you all of that today. And if you look down in the video description, you'll see a link to download this in a Word document format. So you're welcome to download this and use it as a template when building your own CV. But again, I recommend you use it with your own discretion and make sure that it really does fit the format that your university needs, particularly if you're in an academic tenure track environment. So to start with, I have my name up here at the top, and I have my business address. One thing that I did notice early on is when I applied for my first job, I sent them my CV and it had my address in it. That was like a kind of a generic address from my university where I was doing fellowship at Emory, and it wasn't actually a specific address that came to me. And then my job actually used that address and tried to send me a credentialing packet, and it got lost in the hospital system. And so it's important, especially if you're just a resident and you're applying for a job, make sure that the address and the contact info there is accurate and correct, and that people can actually get in touch with you by using it. So that's really important. Make sure that you're doing that. And that your phone number and email address are up to date. And this should go without saying, but I see an awful lot of people who are in training who still don't have a professional Gmail or other web-based email address. Obviously, I don't use this for patient info, but I use this for basically everything else. I use my professional Gmail. And the reason is that if you're at a university, the day you graduate, pretty much most places are going to cut off your access to your Outlook email at whatever university you're at. And if you've given away business cards and given out your email addresses to other people, they're not going to have a way to contact you. Hopefully, if you're watching this video, you're probably familiar that Twitter and Instagram and Facebook are all really fantastic ways to have a way for people to contact you and to have an online presence. So I highly recommend that as well. But not everyone knows how to use those tools, particularly it's the people that may be hiring you may have a less of a likelihood to be using social media. I'm hoping that's going to change over time, but just in case not, it's good to still have an email. So if you are watching this and you're a resident and you haven't set up a Gmail account, go do it today, and make sure that you have a way for people to stay in touch with you after you leave your university. And then the next thing you'll see is that my CV started to get kind of long, which is a good thing. And so to make it easier to navigate, I made an outline here. And so if you click on these are hyperlinks to bookmarks embedded within the document. Okay, so if you click on education, it will bring you down to this education heading where I have all of my college and university and medical school and residency training. If you click on publications, it will take you all the way down to where I start all of the publications that I have down here. So the way that you can create these is if you have somewhere in your document that you want to jump to, you can click on it. Let's see, and go up here to insert, and then insert a bookmark. All right, and then name the bookmark whatever. Publications in this case is what I named it, and you click. I've already made it a bookmark, but just click bookmark name, type in publications, and click add or save. So I'll cancel since I've already done that here. And then go back to where you want to create your link to go down there, and then type in the word education. So let's see if we can do, or I'm sorry, publications. Let's try it, test it here. And if I highlight this word, I can say hyperlink. And then, and I'm using a Word on a Mac actually, so the way it looks if you're using a PC might look a little bit different. If you go here, you have the document. Click on this little document tab in the middle, and then anchor is where the link's going to jump to. So click locate, and then bookmarks, and then you go in here and you click publications. Okay, and then okay, and then when you click on publications, boom, it'll take you right back down. I know it's kind of up at the top of the page here for some reason, but it's close enough. So anyway, that's how I do that. So I use that to make it easier for other people to find things in my CV. And we'll delete that since that was just for testing purposes here. And actually, I use it for me because even though your CV, the point of it is to show other people the kind of academic work or the kind of productive things you're doing in your career, I actually more and more use it as a reference for myself also. Sometimes someone will want a citation for an article I've published, or I'll need to go and look up what date I took USMLE Step 3 for something with licensing. And so it's nice to have all that information in one document. And I personally, I love Dropbox. I don't get paid anything by them to advertise them. I wish I did. But I really find Dropbox amazing. And there are other cloud-based storage options that you can use. And so basically all my publications and all the projects I'm working on, of course, without patient information, I keep all that in Dropbox so it's secure in case my hard drive crashes. And it's also nice because I'll work on it maybe on my computer at home. And then when I come to work, all the files are automatically updated, and I can continue to work on it here on my work computer, save and close the file, go back home, do the same thing, and I'm not moving files around back and forth with a USB drive. If you're still doing that, you should stop, because if you lose your USB drive and you haven't backed up your file for a while, you're going to be really, really sad. So that's my advice to you, is to use a cloud-based storage service that puts a folder on your desktop and keeps all your files in it. So I keep my CV in there, and the reason I do it is for it to be easy to update back and forth, and I only have one version of it. I don't have to continue to worry about if I have an old version. I just update it, and when I update, I go into the header at the top, and I change the date and say, okay, I'm updating it to the 21st of June, and then hit escape, and then that's saved in there. And then when I save and close the file, I rename the file. It's Curriculum Vitae, Jared Gardner, MD, and then at the end, I have the date that it was last updated. And so that helps me to see when it was updated, and it helps anyone I'm sending the CV to see when it was updated. And the other nice thing is that when you store files in Dropbox, you can right-click on them and click Share Link or Share Document, and it will make a link that you can then email to someone, and they can click that link and then download the file directly from your Dropbox without having access to any of your other files, so it still maintains your privacy. And I use that all the time. So, you know, as you start getting involved in an academic career, people will invite you to meetings, and then they'll say, oh, we really need your CV by tomorrow. And if it's on your work computer, well, that's really inconvenient. But for me, I can pull up Dropbox. I actually have the app installed on my iPhone, and I just click share, copy the link, and then I email them the link. And occasionally I find people that have trouble figuring out how to make the link work, but for most people seem to be able to get it to work and download files. It's also a really convenient way to share really large files. So I'll use that. I'll put a bunch of pictures or something in a folder, and maybe they're 30 megabytes or something too large to email to most people. And then I'll just right click on that folder and say share the link. Here's an example I'll show you. So here, we'll get to this later, but if I right click on this, or if you're on a Mac, double click with two fingers, and then just click copy Dropbox link, and what it'll do is it'll copy a link to my clipboard. And when I go back to the Word document here, look, I can go in here and I can paste it. See? And now it's got a link to my Dropbox, and someone who clicks that, it will pull them through to a web interface for Dropbox, and they can download the file or the whole folder, whatever it is you want to share. So again, that's my pitch for Dropbox. It has made my life so much easier, and I just wish I would have found it sooner. So maybe this will help save you from years of wasting time. So in any case, here's the sections that we're going to go over here. I have a section on education, which is where I trained for university, undergrad, med school, residency, fellowship, and then that's postgraduate training. I'm sorry, it would be my sections for residency and fellowship. Professional appointments are going to be where I work, that I'm an assistant professor, soon to be associate professor at University of Arkansas, or wherever it is that you work. Certifications are things like licensure, board examinations. Honors and awards is self-explanatory. If you have received a grant, you can have a section for that. And then I have professional activities, which kind of includes a host of different things, but mostly in my case, it's involvement in professional organizations like medical societies, and also activities regarding being on editorial boards and reviewing papers for journals. And then I keep a list of all the invited lectures and presentations I've given, either locally, nationally, or internationally. I keep a section that kind of details the basic teaching activities that I've been up to. And I actually keep much more granular information in a separate spreadsheet of like how many exactly lectures I've given to my students. I don't actually include every individual lecture I give like at my med school or to my residents. I keep the number of hours of lecture I do in a spreadsheet on my Google Drive, just so that I can track that for promotion and tenure. And I'll make another post about that at some point in the future. But in here, the only lectures I list are ones that I do that are like actually invited talks outside of my normal lectures to residents and med students at my institution. And then different leadership training courses that I've taken. And then I have a whole section for social media and web, which is, maybe why you're watching this video, to see how I do that. And then as you start to get mentions, by a newspaper or TV or something like that, if you have press releases, public relations things, you can keep those listed there. And I used to keep them actually in a separate document because I wasn't sure if it was appropriate to have in my CV. But I think that the point of your CV is to show all of the work, all of your training, all of the work and contributions that you're doing that are related to whatever your profession is. In my case, I'm a pathologist and I'm an educator, and I use social media a lot for education. And so that's why I list all these things. And press and public relations, just like honors and awards, it's a way to show that the work that you're doing is being recognized by other people, that other people find the work you're doing to be worthwhile. Now, that's obviously not all there is to life, but if you're in an academic environment, part of the description of your job is that you're supposed to have a growing reputation nationally and eventually internationally to move up through the ranks of assistant professor, associate professor, and full professor. And so that's why I keep all these things here. If I ever feel like it's not appropriate, it's always easy to go and delete out a section of the CV and send a shorter version. But I used to keep it in separate documents, and now I keep all of the things that I think are relevant in one document so that I can easily share all of it with anyone. And it's always easy to delete, but it's a lot harder to go and dig up different bits of information and add it in. So that's why I keep everything here. And then finally, I have a section where I have my publications and also poster presentations and things like that. So let's go through it. So education is self-explanatory. I keep this is the format I like to use, is having the dates over here and then the institution and what I did there over on the right-hand side. So you can see I did my undergrad and then my medical school. And I usually just use month and year, although occasionally for like licensing or credentialing, they want to know the exact days. So it might be good to keep the day. I can't tell you how many times I've had to go look up what exact date I graduated from med school. Why does that matter? I don't know, but it seems like licensure boards are always interested in knowing the date of your graduation. So it's good to maybe consider keeping that. Oh, and I guess this is not only going to be about CVs, but maybe I'll give you some generic advice too. Another thing, if you're newly graduated from med school and you're watching this as a resident, do not frame your diploma yet. Go and get it scanned. Or the way I scan things these days is I just use my smartphone and I take an image. And there are different apps that can convert your image and square it off and make it into a PDF. But you can just take a picture of it and save that in your Dropbox. And when you graduate residency and fellowship, same thing. Take a picture, keep a folder of important files in your Dropbox. And again, the reason is you're going to have to share those documents with so many people over your career, mainly because of licensure and credentialing. And so to have all of those things digitized and backed up in case your house is destroyed or something. My house got flooded. I was in med school during Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Our house had 5 feet of water in it. We lost everything. So fortunately, I didn't have very many things to lose at that point in my life. But if all of my marriage certificate was lost, and it took me a long time later to go back and get a copy of it once New Orleans recovered from the storm. But there's lots of other documents you have. Keep all those important things backed up on your cloud storage so that they're not lost if something happens, a disaster, God forbid. But also they're easy to share when you need to share them. It's easy to pull them up, share a link in an email, and someone can have your copy of your diploma within 10 minutes. So that's my advice. Okay, then postgraduate training. So this to me includes residency, fellowship. I did a 2-week visiting observership in Korea. during my residency, and I included that here because it was a unique experience. I learned a lot. I gave a couple lectures while I was there, and in fact, this little 2-week observership, I can't tell you how many people have asked me about. So you went to Korea? Tell me how that was. How was it like being there? And one of my great mentors is from Seoul. And he's a very well-known Korean pathologist, Dr. Rowe, and he invited me there for 2 weeks to rotate at the program that he worked with when he's in Korea. And so it was a wonderful experience. And but what's really cool is that people have asked me about that when I was interviewing for jobs. Multiple people asked me to tell them about my experience in Korea. So sometimes things that you might think are insignificant, other people will actually think are really interesting and valuable. And not only does that show people the kind of well-rounded, diverse interests and experiences that you have, which is part of what you want your CV to reflect, but also it will sometimes create talking points during an interview where someone can talk to you about something everyone sees. Yes, you went to med school and university and you went to residency, but when they see you've done something unusual or different, they're going to want to talk to you about that. And if you've been using, say, Facebook or Twitter in an innovative way to educate, I can't tell you how many people want to know about my experiences with that. So that's why I include all of those things in my CV. So as long as you're honest and open about everything that you're putting in your CV and very clear and not trying to make something look greater or more amazing than it was, and as long as everything you're putting in there is true and verifiable, I think it's legit to put anything that you think might be professionally related. And if you're not sure, ask a senior mentor or leader if they think it's appropriate. Now, if you talk to them about putting Twitter in your CV, they may tell you no, but I would personally disagree with that. It's worked out really well for me career-wise to include social media in everything that I do. So it's up to you, but ultimately you have to be responsible for what your CV contains. But I would recommend that you include things that are relevant, but maybe a little bit different or unconventional, because sometimes that will be very interesting to people um, who might be interviewing you. So I think it's good to include all of that, and people can always ignore it if they think, well, I think this is not really that important that Jared does Twitter and Facebook. They can just skim past that section and ignore it and look at my publications instead or whatever. So I did fellowship with Dr. Weiss and then also with Dr. Parker, a Derm Path fellowship in Atlanta at Emory. So I included those on there. And then now academic and professional appointments. So this is including all of my appointments at my university here. I'm an assistant professor. I started out as an associate program director of the Derm Path Fellowship, and then I closed off that date when I got promoted up to full program director of the fellowship. And then, in next month when I become associate professor, I'll actually list down here associate professor in the Department of Pathology, associate professor in the Department of Derm. I'm also a clinical co-director of a module, a course in the second year medical school curriculum, so I include that on there as well. So you can keep all of those things listed there. If you're in private practice, you can put down that you're a laboratory medical director at a certain lab, or that you're in practice at a private group. I think that's fine too. And I think that people in private practice should keep their CV up to date also, because again, you never know when you're going to need this. And it's way easier if you keep your CV up to date as you do things than if you wait a couple of years and then try to go back and add everything to it. It's really simple. If you have it in your Dropbox, every time you get a paper published or give a talk or something, to me it brings me some degree of satisfaction. Whether I don't know what that says about me as a person, but I like to say, oh good, I added an extra little line to my CV. Obviously, that's not the reason that I do the work that I do, but if I can use adding a line to my CV as a way to inspire me to get done the things that I need to get done, well then great. That's kind of a way of gamifying my academic work and helping me to do things that I think are worthwhile and to get them done more efficiently, hopefully. All right, medical licensure. I blocked them out even though these are actually public numbers, but I keep my NPI number. So if you're a U.S. physician, the NPI is a national number that allows you to be tracked for insurance purposes and things like that. If you're an international physician, you don't need to worry about this. But I keep this here because, again, it's a number that I get asked for a lot. I keep my medical license numbers and the dates here, and it actually wouldn't hurt to keep in whatever date it expires, because a lot of times if people ask you for your license, they'll ask for the number, the state, and when it expires. And so licenses usually only last a year or two and have to be renewed. So obviously I always keep mine up to date, but and I also, when I get a copy of my new license, take a picture of it, save it, and move it into my Dropbox in my important files. Again, just like my diploma and all those things. And as you get into practice, you'll see what I'm talking about. This will make your life a lot easier. Certifications. would include like the USMLE STEP exams. And if you're a med student or resident or fellow, it's totally fine to put your scores here. I felt like once I was in practice, it didn't really matter anymore. And so I just removed my score and put passed. I didn't want to look, I don't know, it just didn't seem like it was appropriate anymore to have my scores there. When you're a trainee, it's totally appropriate, I think, because people are interested in that. So again, I keep the date here because you're often asked for if you passed the steps and what dates you passed them. And I also just include that I passed, it should be obvious and common sense. If I have a medical license in the US, I've passed all the steps. That's the legal requirement. But I just include those there. And then also my board certifications. And you could even include maintenance of certification information under there too if you wanted to. All right, honors and awards, kind of self-explanatory. And what I do is I list the award and the name of the organization that gave me the award. And if it's unclear from the name of the award what it might mean, I'll add a couple lines below to explain it. So here I did, when I was a resident, a podium presentation at the Texas Society of Pathologists, and I put in there what it was about and why it won. And then I have some other teaching awards, and I like to put, where it was from and why I got awarded that. This is one that wasn't really a award for me, but it was one of my wonderful residents, Lauren Stewart, who gave an amazing platform presentation in the dual and derm path, and she won. And I was one of the co-authors on this and helped arrange the project and get the case. So I put it on there, but again, I'm very clear that I was just a co-author and that she was the one presented by Lauren Stewart as an oral presentation during the dual and derm path. See, maybe this seems a little too wordy and some people might disagree with me, but I would much rather over-explain and be crystal clear about what exactly I did or did not do than to look like I'm taking more credit. Because if it looks like you're trying to deceive the person reading your CV, that is going to be very bad for you, even if you're not actually trying to do that. So I always try to be really clear about everything I've done. And then I've had some other teaching awards and mentorship awards, things like that. And I've keep these listed here. And I made the pathologist power list, and so I put all that on there. And then in the case of the pathologist, there's a link to the article so people can go and see for themselves. So if there's an article or a website or something online that shows something about your award, I think it's really useful to add a link. That way, if someone's reading and they're like, oh, I wonder what this is, they can click the link and go and read more for themselves. If they're not curious, then they don't have to do that. So anyway, these are the kinds of things that I do, and I recently got the wonderful honor and privilege of being able to speak at a medical student graduation for my med students. So I put that on here as an honor or an award. It actually did come with an award too. And then I actually just recently uploaded a video of my lecture to my YouTube channel, so I forgot to do it, but I'll add in a link to that right down here so that anyone who's interested can go and watch it. Okay, and I got on the ASCP 40 under 40 list, so same thing. I listed out what the 40 under 40 is and a link to their website. So that's kind of how I handle that. Grants, I'm a clinician educator, not a basic science researcher, so I thankfully don't have to go after grants very often. That's not something that I'm terribly interested in doing at this point in my career, but I am partnered. I was partnered with Pam Williams, a PhD here at my university, and she was the principal investigator, but I was a co-investigator, and we got a $50,000 patient-centered research grant to do research with a dermatofibrosarcoma protuberans patients, and I work with a couple of those DFSP groups on Facebook, so that's kind of how we did that. So if you have a grant, you can list that there, and if you're basic science, or if grants are part of your a big part of your career and your ability to stay employed, then you're probably going to have to list a lot more detail about grants, and you should ask the other people that you work with who do a lot of grant work, because I really don't know that much about it. And then finally, or not finally, but I guess professional activities. What I do here is I list the different committees that I'm on and my involvement with various organizations. And as you can see, I've been involved in quite a few organizations ever since residency, and I really enjoy being involved in organized medicine. So I listed out first. I do them in alphabetical order. American Society of Dermatopathology. So was on the informatics committee, and actually when I was chair of that committee, I list out chair, or if I was the founding member. Anytime I had kind of a more prominent role in something, I'll list it and usually bold or underline, something like that, that little entry, so that people can see that, this was more than just being a member of a committee. I was actually chair of the committee. And I helped, I do a lot of work with organizing Twitter for the ASDP and for other organizations, and helping with Facebook and Instagram, all of that. So and then I helped actually found the social media subcommittee and propose it to the board a few years ago, and it got approved. So I listed that on here as well. So That's what I do with basically all the different organizations as I go through. You can see I was in Residence Forum and I was a chair of Residence Forum. And so I list all those things out with the dates that I was involved. Okay. And again, I like to use links whenever I can. So you may wonder how I make links like this. If you're not familiar with how to edit links, it's really cool and convenient. So if you right click on this link here and go to hyperlink and then edit hyperlink, you can see what I've done here. If you this is the actual link, but when you down here in the display box, you can click here. Let's see if we can remove it. Let's do this. Okay, so if I cut and paste this, say I go to the Twitter account for the International Society of Dermpath, and I copy that link and then paste it here into my document. So this is what usually, if you cut and paste a link, this is what it looks like. And if you want to change this to look like just a word, you right click on the link and then go to hyperlink and edit. And here you can see that the link is, here's the link address, and the display, what's showing up on the Word document is the same as the link address. So just delete this display part and type in whatever you want it to say, and then click OK, and look, voila. You've got a beautiful, nice, clean-looking link. So I like to do that to shorten up really long links, and also just makes everything look more clean. I really like a CV that's clean. You might argue, some people might say, well, look, your CV is long because you have all these spaces in it. But to me, I think this is so much easier to read with spaces and bullet points than having everything crammed together in single space, 10 font, which is going to be real hard to read if it's all crammed together. All right, so here's more involvement. And then I list a university or kind of hospital local committees at my institutions. I list those separately. So here I was on the curriculum committee, and I've been involved in some other committees in my own department and at my university. So I list those. And then I keep a list of membership and professional organizations just to show that I am involved in these different orgs and societies. And then sometimes you might be involved in other nonprofits that aren't technically like professional organizations. So there was a local skin cancer foundation. I was on the board of directors, and I'm involved in the Leiomyosarcoma Direct Research Foundation. I just got invited not too long ago to be on their scientific board. And then you can have a section for volunteer work. So this is something that I got invited to do. That it's a collaboration between ASCP and the Brigham and Women's Hospital. And it's this wonderful project where pathologists in Rwanda will upload digital slides of cases and then ask for consults from a variety of different pathology experts. So I got asked to be involved in reviewing dermpath and sarcoma cases from Rwanda. So I list this here because it's something that I do that's volunteer work that doesn't really fit into any of the other categories I have. And then I started to keep a list of people that I've mentored. Students that I've been an official mentor to, and I think that that's good. Or if you have people come and do rotations or electives with you, you can list that as well. And also then I list my editorial boards. So the editorial boards I've been on and what level I am. And once I'm on the board, I've been on the board of a couple different journals and the Archives of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine. Thankfully I got appointed to be a deputy editor-in-chief last year, so I list that here. And you can see I started as a section editor, then an associate editor, and then deputy editor-in-chief. And so I just list each one, and when I finish one, instead of deleting it, I just change the date. Instead of to present, I change it to whatever year that stopped, and then I put in a new line for when I was appointed to the next position. And then also I'm on some editorial and advisory boards for Pathology Outlines, Web Pathology, some Path Presenter, DovMed, some of these online websites that aren't technically like peer-reviewed journals, but I'm still on a board. They're still involved in pathology education and patient education, and so I list those things here as well. All right. And if you've been a guest editor on a particular journal issue, you can list that. And then I do a lot of ad hoc reviewing of manuscripts, meaning, a journal will say, hey, we have this one manuscript, will you review it? So I'm not on their editorial board, but I'm a reviewer. So I just list all of the journals in alphabetical order. You could also list how many reviews you've done and how often you do reviews. I think that's totally fine. There's this new website called Publons that actually keeps track of a lot of the journals, work with them, and once you do a review, it will post that you did a review on your profile there. So I link to that. I put in a link to that profile so that people can see that, yes, I'm telling the truth. I actually am involved in a lot of different journal reviews. And again, this is something that I track in granular detail in a spreadsheet on my Google Drive. I keep track of every journal, how many reviews I've done, the date I did the review, how many I do by year. And the reason I do all that, and again, I think I'll make a video about this in the future, is that when I went up for promotion and tenure, I wanted to include all of those things and to show how I've been spending my time the past 5 years in practice, what I've been doing. So I put in how many lectures I've taught, how many hours of microscope teaching I've done, how many individual med student lectures or resident lectures, how many reviews and how many different journals. And I actually made a bar graph showing how many journal reviews I do per year for different journals over time. So I can kind of show that I've had sustained involvement. So I think it's good to start tracking those things early. And keeping track of as much detail as you can, because when you go up for promotion, they ask for an awful lot of information from you, and it's really hard to reconstruct that in retrospect. So start keeping track of all these things. It's always easy to track too many things and then change your mind later and go back and delete stuff than it is to go back and try to reconstruct this years in the past. All right, the next section is invited lectures and presentations. And I keep these divided into international, national, and then local in my area. And again, I don't include on here if I give a routine lecture to the medical students in the block that I teach, or if I give a lecture to my residents. I do keep track of that elsewhere, but I don't put that on my CV as an invited lecture. Now, if you're a resident or a fellow and you want to put on there that you did, grand rounds in your department, I think that's fine. I think just make it really clear what it is. So my usual format is this: I put the title of my talk here in quotes, and then in italics I put it was presented at Asan Medical Center and the date and where it was, in Seoul, Korea in this case. And so I do that, and that way it's real clear, and people can go and look up and see that, yeah, I was involved and this is a legit thing I'm talking about. So I keep track of all those things, and so I put the international ones here. And now here's one that I gave in China, but I didn't actually go to China. This was a live streaming webinar, basically, but it was invited. It was someone else actually was supposed to do it, and they had a crisis in their family, and I was asked to take over and do this. And so I did it remotely from my office, but it was still an invited talk, and it was given live, and so I still think that's legit. But you can see I put on here, I presented it via live online streaming. Again, I want to be perfectly crystal clear. I've done some interactive webinars for a program in England. I've done some locally or here in the US as well. And so I try to be real clear whether I presented it live webinar or something like that, or if it was an invited video, things like that. I've gotten into the habit more and more of recording either webinars that I do or other lectures I do. And so then I put the video on my YouTube channel oftentimes, and then here I'll link to it. So see, you can see this is a link to the video. I gave a talk for Derm Talks, which is a wonderful program that Laszlo Karai and some colleagues run, and they actually recorded the webinar video that I did, and I added it to my YouTube channel and then put a link. And again, what's nice about this is that if someone sees it and they think, oh, that's interesting, I wonder how he is as a lecturer, they can click this and they can go and watch and see for themselves. So it gives a chance for a person reading my CV to get as much information as they want or as little as they want. They can always just skim over this and say, okay, he's given some talks, that's fine. So I would rather have too much information there, as long as it's readable, than have too little. So again, you can see I've started incorporating more videos and things like that. So, and I recently gave a couple of lectures in Spain, so I actually have the Spanish version here with the English version over here too. And I have a video of that, and I put that on my YouTube. So again, I've more and more have started to record videos, or if my wife is with me, I'll have her use my iPhone and record. If not, I have a little tripod that has flexible legs and will hook onto the back of chairs, and I just set up my iPhone with record, and if there's someone sitting next to the phone, I'll ask them just to kind of make sure. Thankfully, two very wonderful pathologists happened to notice my phone fell during this video, and they put it back up for me, which was really great. Otherwise, it would have only been a half of a talk that I would have had a video of. Okay, the next I list my national lectures that are invited. And I didn't talk about this at the beginning, but everything I list is in chronological order, not reverse chronological. When I first started my CV as a resident, it seemed more reasonable to me to have the more recent thing I've done at the top and the older things down at the bottom, right? That I think, and I see a lot of people doing that. But when I got into practice, one of my senior mentors advised me not to do that. And I was kind of resistant at first, but I can tell you as a program director, I have read many, many, many CVs, and it actually is easier for the people reading your CV to read it in order. Even though it might seem weird to start with something that's old at the beginning, and to work your way down. It's a lot easier to read it in the order it happened, so it makes life easier for your CV reader, whoever's reading it. And the other nice thing is, if I want to add something to the end, I just do this. I click enter, and look, it makes a number 20. And the reason that's useful is as you start to get a lot of lectures or a lot of publications on your CV, it's nice to have this number, because sometimes someone will ask you, well, how many talks have you done, or how many papers? And I can go through and I can add up, well, I've done 19 international, and I've done, I don't know, where's the bottom here? 58 national, and I don't know, 20 local. So I can tell people that really quick. I don't have to go and count them all up. So I think it's really easy. It's hard to insert things at the beginning. Sometimes the numbering system in Word can be a little tricky. And that's why I'm giving this template. I'm hoping that it's easier for you to just take and modify this template, because sometimes building a list and getting it to stop here at this number and start at 1 down here and make 2 separate lists, I've had trouble getting that formatting to work sometimes in Word. So hopefully this template that I'm giving you will make it easier. So anyway, you can just click and then you can type in, whatever thing you've done. All right. So I think it's nice. I use chronological order. If you don't like that and you want to use reverse chronological, that's okay. I don't think there's any rule against it. Just whatever you do, of course, be consistent in your CV and use the same format throughout the document. All right. So more of those meetings, lectures that I've given, and scroll down a bit here. All right. Course directorships. Even though these are like lectures, and when I tell people how many lectures I've done, I count these as though they are lectures. But I think that being a director of a whole course at a national meeting is kind of a different level, and so I like to list those out separately. And then if the course runs for a couple years, or like in this case, I was asked to do a roundtable and it sold out, so they asked me to do a second session the next day. So I list those as 2 separate events, because it was the same lecture but given twice. So I think that counts. And so I keep all of those things listed out here. And in fact, for those of you who do follow me on social media, this was the very first lecture that I ever gave about social media at the CAP 2013 meeting. So just a little less than 4 years ago. And I think I've given about 40 lectures on the topic of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram for pathologists and other medical professionals. So this is something that, like I said, this is more than just something I spend a little bit of time doing because it's fun. This is actually a big part of my career now, which is why I list this stuff on my CV. All right. And then if you moderate a platform session, even though you're not technically doing the presenting, I think you're still being involved in supporting the work of an organization, and I think that's legit to mention as well. And then I have teaching and educational experience, and I include tumor boards that I've been in, and other teaching sessions I do. And again, I don't list out every single teaching session, so I've actually done, I think, about 70 different sarcoma tumor boards at my institution now. And I keep track of those in that same document with all the other things. I track how many times I've attended tumor board, how many times I've given didactic lectures to my residents. I track all of that, and I only update this in my CV maybe once or twice a year at the most. And the point of this is just to show, yes, I'm involved in all of these different kinds of teaching activities here at my university, in addition to the invited lectures that I just talked about there. And the exact number of hours doesn't matter. If I've done 132 lectures for my fellows versus 150, that doesn't really matter, right? Clearly, I'm doing some teaching, and I'm being involved in that way. But when I went up for promotion, it actually does matter to know exactly how many hours I've been spending on all these things. And that's why I track all of it. I track how many hours I spend preparing for each lecture, and how many lectures I give to my local, residents and fellows and students. And I track all of that in an Excel spreadsheet in real granular detail. And then I can kind of summarize it here into the CV whenever I need to submit this for promotion or something really important where they need to know. Or if I'm trying to get approved to give a course, I put in a course proposal at USCAP or somewhere, I will update this to show the maximum hours I've actually spent teaching, so people know I really do have a lot of experience teaching. So that's the way I kind of handle that. And I'm a small group mentor. I put all those things on here. I've done a variety of leadership and faculty training things, and I list those out. I did way back when the CAP offered spokesperson training. I did that. Then they changed it to Engage Leadership Academy, which is kind of a modified version of spokesperson. I did that. I participated in a test exam question writing workshop, which if you ever get a chance to do this, it was really helpful. I have to write a lot of exam questions, and I actually find it to be very challenging, and there were a lot of really wonderful tips in this workshop that I recently did. And I had the real distinct pleasure of just a couple weeks ago going to the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard up in Boston, and for a patient-partnered research meeting. I wasn't sure where to put this on my CV, so I put it kind of here under leadership and faculty development. It was an invitation-only thing that my travel was funded and paid for, and I was one of only maybe a dozen doctors there, and then there were about 60 or 70 patients and patient advocates from rare cancers and different organizations and advocates. And the concept was, how can we partner to make research happen more quickly, partnering patients and researchers. It was a wonderful experience, but I added that there because, again, that's relevant. And the reason I got invited to that is because I'm involved in rare cancer Facebook support groups. And that's what's led there. So you can see that, because when I go up for promotion, I actually use social media as a big component of what I'm doing academically. In addition to giving lectures and publishing papers, I not only use social media to teach, but I'm using it to interact with patients, to do research, to be involved in collaborations, I'm invited to give lectures about social media. So it shows that I'm not just spending my time doing something that maybe traditional academic people might think is wasteful, but I'm actually leveraging that to use for more traditional career things, like getting invited to give lectures at international meetings, or going to patient collaborations at prestigious institutions. So if you use social media and then you're interested in how to use that towards promotion, and again, I'm going to put some other information out about that sometime soon. At least that's my plan. But I think that this is an important way, is to help weave that into your CV and show how you've used social media and how that has collaborated together. See down here, I put there were only 80 invited participants, but I was invited because I work with sarcoma Facebook patient support groups. So I try to show in the more traditional things I do how social media has played a role in that. And then I actually list all the social media and kind of online web experience that I have. So I created the Pathology Resident Wiki, which is one of my first online things that I did when I was supposed to be studying for boards in my senior year of residency. So it's amazing how much you can get accomplished when you're procrastinating. But I actually did study for boards and passed them, so don't worry. But I made this website during that time, and the goal was to make kind of a directory of all the residency and fellowships in pathology in the U.S. But I've actually now used it to make new pages, like my social media guide. I've put all of those, a bunch of different pages on there that I've locked down and just made so that I can edit it only. And now I can refer people there. And so that's something that I've done. I've got some online digital slide collections. I've got a variety of Facebook groups, as many of you probably know. And I put on there, like in this case, surgical anatomic pathologists. That group was founded by Sadiq Emmer from Saudi Arabia. And so I'm not the founder, but I do contribute, and I'm an administrator there. So I put those things down, and then I put a link to the group. The bone and soft tissue pathology group and the dermpath group, I founded those. So I put that I'm a founder, a contributor, and an admin. I just want to make it clear what it is that I do. I was a web admin for my department for a short time, and then realized I was way too busy to be doing that. I helped organize a live tweet group for USCAP back in 2015, which really kind of started me down the road towards being really involved in Twitter. And I've been involved in a variety of other groups. I helped co-found the Pathology Journal Club Path JC, and more recently DermPath JC. I was a invited guest for the American Medical Association Twitter chat last summer. Eve Crane and I wrote a paper about the ethics and privacy issues regarding posting of pathology images on social media. And that was published in the AMA Journal of Ethics. And then they invited us to do a tweet chat, which was really cool. So after the chat, they made like a summary. And so I put a link to that there. There's a story file of the chat. So again, people that are not familiar with this can click the link and go and see. Because, if you put this stuff about Twitter and the person reading your CV doesn't know about Twitter or use Twitter, they may not even know how to go and look up and see that you've actually done this. And so if they can click on one of these links and see, well, then that's helpful. So I've been involved in a lot of other things. I have a list of all the professional accounts that I'm either have founded or have contributed to, and I'm an admin of. My Facebook pages, LinkedIn, all that stuff. I don't really use LinkedIn very much, but I do have an account. So as I do those things, I list them. And then also I'm involved in a variety of sarcoma and other rare disease support groups. So I list those out as well, that I'm involved in those. And then, again, I have a press and public relations section. So whenever I get mentioned, if an article is done about me, or if I have an interview that's done on me, I'll put it here with a link so that, again, people can see it. If I don't want it in here, I can always go and delete it. But I left this section in even when I went up for promotion. I had this and included it in my CV. And again, the promotion and tenure committee didn't seem to mind too much because they did approve me for promotion. And then I've conducted a variety of video interviews, particularly for the American Society of Dermpath and more recently for UseCap. And so as those go live, I put the link there so that people can watch. I got a chance to interview Phil LeBois and Clay Cockrell, Omar Singweza, a lot of different people, and I put those links here. So again, I just list off all of these different things, and I actually, this is a little unconventional, but I was pretty excited. Siddhartha Mukherjee, who wrote The Emperor of All Maladies, he actually tweeted about me a couple times about the work I've done with Facebook support groups, and I thought that was so cool. So I thought, why not list it on your CV? He's a really famous person and an author. Again, someone can say, well, that's stupid, I don't care, and they can ignore it. But to me, this was a really meaningful and important thing that someone of that stature would actually mention me and say a kind word about the work that I was doing. And again, it helps to show that I'm not the only person who says that Facebook is a good thing for us to do as doctors, and that being involved in patient groups is a good thing. Even other people that are much more prominent say the same thing, and so it's nice to help have that kind of information there for people who might have a more traditional mindset about academic activities. Oh, and then also BuzzFeed.com actually wrote an article about me because they saw that I was posting about how I tried Snapchat and I wasn't very good at it. And so that was really cool. So I listed that on there too. And I was on a news segment actually also about Snapchat. So I include all those things in this section of my CV. Finally, publications, right? The most important thing in the CV in the academic setting is how many publications you have. So here's how I do publications. So first of all, you'll see here, I actually have a comment right at the top that says that you can get most of my publications free as PDFs from my Dropbox. So I'm not sharing the link here publicly for the sake of the publisher so they don't get upset with me. I would happily give away all my publications for free, but the publishers have different rules. So what I do is I have a folder on my Dropbox, JMG publications, and I keep most of my PDFs of my publications organized by year. And this is really convenient because I often will reference these either for regular practice. I need to look at a paper I wrote and try to remember what stain was positive in this tumor, or I'll need to get an old reference, or someone will ask me, hey, can I get a copy of your rhabdomyosarcoma paper with Steve Billings? And I'll say, okay, sure. And then I'll send it to them. So it's nice to have this. And again, I love Dropbox and I save everything on there. So I think this is a great way. And what you can do is you can actually right click on this folder here and again, copy the Dropbox link, and then you can go back over to Word, and you can paste it. People can click that, and they can download copies of your PDFs. And I think that's acceptable because I'm, giving my CV to individual people, and you're allowed to share PDFs for individual use. You just can't, publicly share them broadly. That's my understanding of the rules, at least. And the way I divide up my publications is I put original peer-reviewed research, which would be like basically larger case series or actual, hypothesis-driven research that I've done. And I don't do basic science research, but I basically, if you do a project with immunostains on multiple tumors, or you do a case series of 5 or 10 different things, I'll include those here. And again, I put them in the order from my first publication back in 2008 and on up. And I underline and bold my name so that people can easily see whether I was the first author, a middle author, or the last author. I've actually started wondering if maybe I should use a different color for if I'm a first author or a last author, and then not underline and bold in the middle. I'll leave that up to you to decide. I'm still experimenting with my CV over time, and I think it's actually kind of fun to find new ways to format my CV to make it more user-friendly, both for me and for those who read it. And then what I do is after the paper's published, I actually put here, see, this is a link to PubMed. So I put a link to the abstract here, and I just, do that right-click and edit the hyperlink and name it abstract. And then some journals like Archives of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine have, free PDFs for anyone anywhere in the world. And I'll put a link to the PDF actually and label it as PDF. So I list all of my papers that are published here. See, here's an example. This is a free document. So if you click that, it'll actually go to the Archives website and you can pull up the whole PDF. So I like to add those links. Again, it makes it easier. People don't have to go and do a lit search themselves. They can just click the link and see what you were writing about if they think that the paper looks interesting and they want to find out more. So I put all of those things, and again, I've started doing research about social media, and so I've included those publications. And then for me, now that I'm in practice, I only list papers in my CV that are actually accepted for publication. I've submitted them, we've gone through review, and they said, we've accepted your paper. It may be some time before the paper is published online ahead of print, and even longer before it comes out in print. But I think once you've received an acceptance and you could give someone a copy of the acceptance email, for example, then I think it's totally legit to list it in your CV, and I just put it as in press. It's a little different if you're a resident, a med student, a resident, or a fellow and in training. I think that any paper that you've written to the point that you have actually a draft ready, you should be able to list in your CV. What I do then is I just say list it really clearly. Again, it all goes back to being clear about what's actually been done. Is be very clear about what stage it's in. Say you've written up a draft and you sent it to your senior author. Maybe I'm the senior author. I take a long time, unfortunately, to edit manuscripts because I have like 25 or 30 projects on my plate right now. And so in the meantime, though, you shouldn't get penalized just because I'm slow and lazy. You should put on there, draft completed and submitted to senior author for review. And I say that you should, if you have a draft that's ready, that say you went on an interview and someone said, oh, I'd like to see a copy of that paper. If you could send them the draft that same day when you get home, then I think that's totally legit to put on your CV. Just make it clear that it's not accepted yet. It's just been submitted to the senior author. Or you can have a different section if you've got a paper that's already been submitted to a journal but it's still under review. You can list that because again, at that stage of your career, it does matter that you're involved in any sort of academic activity. That's going to matter when you're applying for residency, fellowship, or your first academic job. So I think showing that you've been involved and that you have things that actually are in progress and close to completion is important and totally fair, as long as you're very clear about what exactly you've done. And don't ever change the order of where your name is. If you're published as a middle author, do not put your name as first or last, which are the two most important places. So there have been some studies actually that look at applications for fellowships and residencies and found that people have actually kind of fibbed and put their name in the wrong place. If someone detects that you're doing that, you're going to be instantly blackballed because no one wants someone who's academically dishonest in their program. So just be very, very clear and very honest, and that's always going to be the best approach. Actually, one time, a long time ago, I had a paper published that had my name on it, and I didn't even realize it was kind of an accident. The senior person thought that I was involved, and I don't have that paper listed on my CV. I don't feel that it's fair. It's out there in the literature. It's not a big deal. I was like a middle author, but I feel like it would be wrong for me to claim credit for that because I didn't do anything to help with that paper. It was just an accident. So I guess I could go and try to get my name retracted, but I feel like it was pretty insignificant and not going to cause any real problems, but I don't list it or claim credit for it. I really want to have the same kind of level of honesty that I have with the IRS because I don't want to get in trouble for cheating on taxes. I try to be so clear and honest with them because I'm afraid of getting in trouble if I do anything wrong. I try to have that same level when working on my CV because if you mess up, you can really hurt your academic career, and it's just wrong and not fair to do that. So anyway, once you're in practice, I only list things that are actually in press. I keep another spreadsheet. Again, I have spreadsheets of all sorts of different stuff that tracks all of the different papers and publications I have in progress, and has different boxes for me to remember, oh, I'm waiting for the first author to finish the draft, or I need to edit this, or we submitted this to this journal, but it's not come back yet. So I do keep track of that. But in my CV, I only put things once they've actually been accepted. And then I have my peer-reviewed research up there, and then I have a section for peer-reviewed case reports. Do you have to do this? No, you don't. And certainly when you're in training and you don't have very many papers yet, you don't need to worry about this. If you've published something or it's been accepted in a peer-reviewed journal, you can list it in one section. That's fine. I would bring up one point. I see this happen a lot from applicants to DermPath Fellowship. They will present something at a meeting, and then sometimes, say you present at USCAP. USCAP will then publish all of the abstracts in Modern Pathology. And you can cite that in there, but don't cite it twice. I see sometimes people will put under publications, they'll have their poster, they'll have the published abstract, but the abstract is not actually really the full paper. I know I say abstract here, but these are abstracts that actually go to a full published paper. So it's okay to put all of those things on your CV, and I know that I don't think that these are people that are trying to cheat or deceive me. I think they just don't know that they shouldn't do that. So in that case, put a section for, here's posters I've presented, and then when the abstract is published, you can put a little link to the abstract there with the poster. Once you actually get the full paper published, then you can have a separate section for actual publications, and you can put the paper in there. So I think it's real important to divide those out, because otherwise it looks like you have more publications than you do. And again, I know that the applicant probably just didn't understand, and I've seen this happen multiple times, and it's pretty obvious, so I don't think that they're trying to trick me, but I think that it could potentially confuse somebody who's looking at your application or your CV and think that you're trying to deceive them. And again, that's a bad impression to give. So I keep my my research and case series up here. Case reports, or if I just am reporting 2 cases or something, I put down here under a case report section. And then down here at, I've talked about this before when I give lectures about about social media, because I did this paper with my friend Keisuke Goto. He posted this really cool case of sparganosis on my Facebook group. So we partnered together with Gina Johnson, who's actually now my fellow, and she's graduating in just a couple days and going into practice. So we all collaborated remotely and wrote this up and got it published, and it accidentally got published twice, on the January 2015 and then again on the March 2015 cover of Journal Cutaneous Pathology. I think it was just a glitch at the publisher, and see, I put it here, inadvertently double published by the journal, but I actually think it's really cool that it was published twice, so I list it only once. I only get credit for one paper, but I do list both of the links because I just think it's really cool. This is going to be the crowning achievement of my academic career right here, that I got double published once on accident. So I'm just kidding, but it is still cool. So anyway, and I've also started to do YouTube videos and put online whole slide digital images to go along with my papers, and I'll embed a link in the paper and a QR code on one of the figures, and I'll have to show that in a different video. But when I do that, I'll often list out, oh, here's a link to the slide. Once this paper just got published online just a couple days ago, so I'll update this in a few days with the link, so people can link to the paper, they can link to the supplemental content. Again, any kind of information that you have for people that are reading your CV to go to is great. Like, here's when we did a supplemental video to show polarization of crystals, so I put a link in there, and I put an abstract also for the paper. And then I have another section for invited reviews. Sometimes you're asked to do an invited review for a journal where you review a topic. I list those in a different section. I list editorials in a different section. I list letters to the editor in a different section. And then I finally have a miscellaneous section, and I use this for blog posts that I do. I don't, obviously put every Facebook and Twitter post on here, but if I do a substantial blog post, like for the ASCP1 lab blog, I'll put a link to that. If I write a page, I created a DermPath Fellowship, how to get a DermPath Fellowship guide on my wiki. That's actually a full page that I actually wrote, and so I have a link to it here. Anything that I think is a substantial contribution, even if it's not necessarily peer-reviewed in the traditional sense, I'll put it on here, and that's why I have it under miscellaneous. These are not necessarily routine, traditional peer review. That's why I put them in a different section, to make it clear to a reviewer, hey, these are things that I've done that I think are relevant and useful to people and are related to my field and related to my work. They're my creative production that I've made, but they're not traditional resources. So I think that you can include all these non-traditional things on your CV as long as you're very clear and separate out where they belong. I've done some ASDP Case of the Month case studies. Those are really good. They're educational. They're kind of like a case report, and they actually are peer-reviewed by the person who's running the ASDP case studies at that time. But they're not traditional, case reports in a journal. So I list them down here instead, because I think it's useful and academic, but it's not a traditional thing. So I have a bunch of different things. Those things, different how-to guides that I have my social media guide for pathologists. I list all that stuff from my wiki that I have. We wrote a pathology hashtag ontology list for simpler.com, so I posted that on there. An H&E staining protocol, because a lot of people around the world have trouble getting good H&Es, and that's the best place to start when you're trying to, even if you're in a poor, resource-poor setting, you have to start with good H&Es before you worry about ancillary tests. I've done some blog posts for ASCP as part of the 40 Under 40 program, so I list all of those things there. I also have done some textbook reviews on Amazon.com, and I didn't used to list these, but now I decided why not list them? I think they're useful to the authors of the book. They show that I'm being involved in my community. So now I list the book, and I have a link. You can go to these. These are my Google short links that will go and take you to Amazon. And I actually like to use Google to make short links, because it links to my Google account, and I can go and look at the link and see how many people have actually clicked and followed the link. So I'm starting to use these more and more because they're short and convenient and not as long as, say, an Amazon web link. And also I can track how many people follow the links, and I use them on social media and other places too. So I reviewed some of my favorite books on here, and I list those. I make teaching videos for YouTube, and I list all of those on here with the name and the date and the link to the video. And then I've written a variety of textbook chapters. I list those down here in a separate section. So I have all these things separated out. And again, if you're just starting out and you only have a few things, it's okay. You don't have to have all these sections. As my CV grew, I made more and more sections. Finally, if I've done platform presentations of a case or a presentation, kind of different from invited talks, like research that I've submitted that got accepted for a platform, I'll put that here. And I haven't done very many of those actually, because now mostly I'm the senior author and the junior residents are are the ones who are presenting platforms. And then finally, selected abstracts are like posters. When you're in training, it's okay to have all your posters. I try to keep up with it now, but honestly, I've got quite a few posters on here. I usually delete the poster once I've actually got the paper published. Sometimes I forget to put posters on here. Posters don't really matter much when you're in academic practice anymore. Papers are what matter more. But when you're in training, I think listing all your posters is totally fair. But again, I just put selected abstracts, but I think you should actually put poster presentations at meetings, platform presentations, and then have a separate section for actual publications in the literature, and make that very clear, especially if you're a trainee applying for residency or fellowship or your first academic job. So that is how I format my CV, and I hope that you find it helpful.